Welcome to those of you from around the country so far. We've got the East Coast, Midwest, Southeast, definitely California is represented in the building. So welcome. Make sure you grab your coffee, and even better if you have your mug. I may have mentioned before that those are available on the website, but of course because of COVID-19 there's been a little bit of supply chain issues, so we hope to have that back up within the next week or two and be able to start shipping out some mugs for those of you who have ordered. For those of you who have yet to order, including my sister Malia, feel free to place your order. Gotcha. Anyway, so yeah, there's that. And I also wanted to point out that today that we're going to have a specific conversation about our mental health during COVID-19. I'm going to bring in a good fraternity brother of mine, a good dude who's been doing this work for many years as far as being in the mental health space, Dr. Milo Dodson. Tell you a little bit more about him here in a second. But I do wanted to at least highlight why the topic and the choice of shirt here. I wanted to make sure that you all are aware that this right here, in loving memory of, and this is, I think what, 2.5 maybe? Yeah, I was 2.5, and my cousin Perry here was 18 months. And then this is us at his wedding, actually not even knowing that we were accidentally mimicking that pose for actually standing at his wedding that day. And so he unfortunately took his own life back in September 8th of 2019. Here's the back of the shirt. Showing props to my mom on this, because she's the one who facilitated getting this shirt made and shipped it to me and wanted to make sure I wore it. So this is for Perry Leroy. Yes, his middle name was Leroy. Perry Leroy Jones III. And I'd like to make sure that we dedicate today's show, when we're talking about mental health, to him, just for my prosperity. And he was a big supporter of Coffee with the Black Guy mission. In fact, I had encouraged him and his son last year around this time to go and attend a Coffee with a Cop session in our hometown of Westminster, Maryland, and they did, and the feedback from that was great. And him and I had a great relationship, as you can see here. It was a brother cousin. He was I think was like 13 months younger than me. But that's the shirt for today, and that's who this show on our mental health during COVID-19 is dedicated to. Quick little appreciate the condolences there to those of you who are in. EJ and Jared, if you all, you all are in the share drive. So if there's any questions that pop up here, can you all please put those in the doc that we have, and Dr. Dodson will have some of that access to that as well. Let's see, is there, plenty light here. We got a good sunny day. Let's see if we can get some more light here. Not too much, but there we go. So, quick recap, Coffee with the Black Guy. We had the first official kind of live coffee talk last Saturday, same time, same place, and just kind of talking through some of the issues that are specific to COVID-19 and race. And one of those issues that came up was mental health, and what resources are available for folks like us who are at home, and I guess we'll call it a continuum of ways that we're impacted by this virus. We talked about some of the housing implications. We talked about why our Black and brown communities so much more impacted by some of these by this virus. We're looking at high death rates and high percentages of infections and all those things, and we'll get into some of that stuff. But largely, the looking at what's along the continuum of how we're impacted by this thing, right? We're looking at financial impacts. We're looking at familial impacts. We're looking at we're asked to shelter in place and be at home. Sometimes home is not always the safest place, and so there's various ways that this thing is impacting and affecting those of us in our community. And so I, wanted to partner with this brother for some time, and we finally just figured it out and was like, look, just come on and we'll have a conversation here. He's got his coffee ready. Give you a little bit of background about Dr. Milo Dodson here. He's a licensed psychologist out here in Southern California. He's the director for Common's Summer Youth Camp. That's the rapper Common Summer Youth Camp. And he's a senior staff psychologist at UC Irvine. He's originally from Covina. Got his PhD in counseling psychology from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And he, in his role at UC Irvine with the Counseling Center, he also serves as a liaison to the athletic department in the esports program. So he's got a very diverse background as far as that goes. The topic of Commons Camp is Dreamers and Believers, and so he's been directing that camp for about 6 years now. And in the process, I think the latest project he might share a little bit about here when he hops on, but his latest project is he's currently writing a book, a creative project for television and co-hosting a podcast with nationally acclaimed radio personality Yessie Ortiz. It's called Mental Health is Real, Reflecting Empathy and Love to discuss wellness, mental health, and social justice. He also adamantly believes in self-care and as far as necessary to creating a balanced life. And he enjoys traveling, exercising, and photography. And I can speak, a little bit more personally on the brother. We initiated him into my graduate chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Don't get it twisted. This is just the water. The coffee's in the branded mug. But when you bring individuals into the organization, you're really looking for men of character, and there was no question that he was definitely a man of high character, doing good things in the community. We're looking for impact in our larger community, but just that when he brings that compassion to our chapter, when he brings that compassion to our gatherings and things of that nature, it just shows out that he really lives the values that he talks and preaches. And so without further ado, let me give, yes, I am a dork, Joe. It's all good. I learned it from watching you. Let me see here. Milo, did you request yet? And he'll join the conversation here in just a second. Good morning. Good morning.
Hey,
how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Hey, your face.
Man, I can barely recognize my face with all this facial hair I got right now. I'm kind of jealous of your beard there, bro. I feel like you're cheating. Like, what barber do you have at home?
So this is what happens. Like, if anybody read the Forbes article, I've been cutting my own hair since I was in high school. And just last year, I started kind of going to the barber and stuff. And so, I have the great conversations and stuff with my barber, but it's not essential. I can do it myself. So, all of that is me.
Well, I give you props on that, bro. I'm over here just struggling. I shave a little bit down here, but this has a mind of its own. So one way or another, though, it's good to be here with you, bro. I got my coffee on deck here, special mug from my grandma. So we are ready to go.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, you heard some of the conversation earlier, just more or less just wanted to try to open up a conversation about, last week some folks were asking about what resources, particularly during this time of physical distancing, how can folks either with pre-existing mental health issues, folks who have emerging mental health issues because of our circumstances, and folks who don't necessarily see themselves as having mental health issues, but are still dealing with the crazy intersectionality of this COVID-19 on our community, right? We're looking at, the impact of the virus. Then on top of that, the financial impacts of, a lot of our folks are frontline workers, and, are out there serving the public. They're out, and we're out, are out, doing the things that are necessary to keep things moving and functioning at a somewhat relative level. And so there's a lot of different things that can impact the way that this people are feeling about this time and place.
Yes.
And so, I just want to say, thanks for joining us,
Yeah, man.
and give us a little bit of, drop us a little bit of knowledge on kind of your background and, kind of some recommendations that you might have for folks at various levels of the game, so to speak,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
to,
yeah.
to kind of help navigate this interesting time.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, first and foremost, thanks for having me. I really just want to acknowledge and to show, share my condolences and share respect for your loss of your cousin. I
Thank you.
know any death feels particularly tragic, and I think the loss of life is always something to be revered and to be acknowledged. And as it relates to mental illness that way, and death by suicide, that's something to really show lots of love and support for. So with that, the reason why I wanted to open up the space, and one, just acknowledging that, but two, being able to be specific. We have mental health all of the time, every day, pandemic or no pandemic. And
Right.
what I hear people now starting to do is pay more attention to mental health because we feel more confined. We feel like we're at home. Ellen made the not so great joke about like feeling like she's in prison at her multi-million-dollar home. First of all, just no, Ellen. But second of all, I think people are starting to feel like they have less choices and less options. And so now they're starting to feel maybe a little bit more anxious and or maybe more depressed. So now mental health becomes more of a salient concern, a salient thing for us to think about. But the reality is we had mental health before the pandemic, and we're going to have mental health after the pandemic ends, after the stay-at-home orders are lifted. So what's really, really helpful for us now is to be still and to focus on ourselves, to focus on how we can heal and how we can be healthy. It's not about being productive. Like I've seen all these memes about you got to pick up like 5 side hustles. You got to fix the shed, the she shed, or you got to have your man cave or a combination thereof. And that's just not realistic because it's not that you have more free time, it's that you're navigating a pandemic. So I want to break this down into 3 major areas to think about for folks: your mind, your body, and your spirit. So in terms of your mind, what are you doing to be still, and what are you doing to kind of decrease that negative self-talk that I know we all have at times, for us being, competitors, for us trying to be professionals. Sometimes that negative self-talk, that inner drive is helpful, yeah, but we also want to make sure that it's being used in a positive way. So imagine if like anxiety is on a continuum versus like an on and off switch. So on this side of anxiety, you have it where it's going to be kind of more of a motivating factor. Like I said, that voice, the self-talk that you have is helping you be motivated, helping you stay engaged in whatever work that you're doing. On the opposite side is when anxiety becomes more problematic and it has a negative impact on your daily functioning. So whether that's you're having difficulty sleeping, you are more irritable in your relationships, or you're not concentrating as well. So again, that's anxiety, and that's more of the mental, that's more of the mind piece of it. The physical is something that we also need to think about. So for me, I know when I get anxious, I feel like my heart starts to race a little bit more, and I get like, that not so great feeling in the stomach. You get the BGs, right? Um, so those are indicators for me that I need to like be more still and to focus on my own mental health that way. And some people, it could be like your hands start to sweat, or you start to feel a little tingly thing on your neck. So mind and body, and there's also the spiritual. So this isn't necessarily saying you have to have any type of religious background or religious identity. For me, I happen to be Catholic, so I do pray, and being able to do online masses feels really special, just to still have that type of connection. But the main piece here is to have a spiritual connection during this time. And so that allows us to kind of not just have faith and not just have hope as like a destination that we're getting to, but it's more so that faith is a lens that we're looking through. And how are we understanding this whole situation? So that's just kind of a quick breakdown. The last thing, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, a quick question on that. So you were talking about like your online mass allows you to feel like you still have a connection. Can you talk a little bit about how that connection is different and similar to what you would normally be doing? And so folks can kind of put it to like if they do yoga and now they're doing online yoga instead of going to the actual studio. It's a very similar process and similar thing. But I'm curious as to what those similarities and differences are for you.
Yeah. So for me, being able to see our church online still allows me to mentally connect with that physical space, even though I'm not there. And even though I'm not physically in the presence of the priest, it still allows me to feel like spiritually connected and emotionally connected to that space and to the congregation, as it were. The other thing I want to highlight, so a lot of people may be doing more, or psychologists like myself are offering more therapy online. And a lot of people have been saying like, well, I want to do online therapy, and making a distinction as if like there's online therapy and there's in my office therapy. But the reality is it's therapy and it just happens to be in my office or it happens to be online. It's the same type of approach, it's the same interventions. And so I want folks to think about that if they do have more of that spiritual background, if they do have more of that religious background, it's church, but it's church online. It's not just like some other type of experience that you're going to have altogether.
Okay. No, that's very helpful. That's very helpful. Thank you. And you were going to get to another point before I jumped in with that question.
Yeah, I think the other point, I was trying to pull up the document here, but I think the government continues to show us that like the essential workers, who we know tend to be more black and brown, that essential workers matter. But what I really want us to be careful about is not, we know this, but I want to just speak this into existence here, that Black lives matter. And it's not just about the productivity. It's not just about you being able to make money. It's not about you being able to make companies money. It's about your life as a human being and the importance of saying Black lives matter and not, the previous all lives matter type of counter that we've seen about in the past. And so I think Black lives are essential, not just essential workers that way, whether or not we're employed, whether or not, we're in between jobs or whatever the case may be.
Right. No, that's key. And I think a lot of times like that's lost in the conversation about frontline workers. There's a lot of reverence and appreciation duly and long overdue for those in the medical industry. But there's a lot of those that you don't think about that are also like, think about the cleaning crews that have to clean up the hospital, that have to clean up the essential office. Like those are the same folks we need to applaud. And those are the folks that we often overlook in our society, our communities. But as we see, have been, and will continue to be essential to our sustenance and moving forward. And so, I just hope that folks, you don't have to be productive, but I think that this is an awesome time, and I pointed this out last week. This is an awesome time and opportunity to be able to see perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Right now, we, me as just a human citizen or global citizen, my individual actions are required for the health of the whole, right?
That's right.
And so something about that, I think, is really, there's an opportunity for folks to really see and make connections to, the Black experience, right? The
Mm-hmm.
experience of single mothers, the experience of others, because, no matter how we're individually impacted, you can always think about how some person in another, in some sort of other scenario, so to speak, is impacted as well.
That's exactly it, man. Because I think a lot of people feel that the stay-at-home, ban or the order there, it's about like a limitation on what they're doing about them. But this isn't about the me, this is really about the we. And the reason why we're staying at home is to have those people who are more susceptible to illness and more vulnerable populations, have them stay safe and to, we know to flatten the curve. So being able to stay at home is actually an act of compassion and an act of empathy. And so like you're saying, we have to understand, even the old principle of Ubuntu, right? I am because we are. I'm staying at home. I'm going to take care of myself. And that actually isn't about being selfish. That's actually an act of love for other people who are essential workers or who do have to be out there. And I think having that perspective has really helped me because, like, I want to go out. I love to travel. And, like, traveling right now is going from the living room to the bedroom and, to the kitchen. So, like, I want to be able to get back out there. But right now, I also know that I need to keep my community safe. And that's what matters more than anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Appreciate seeing those new folks joining us there. Gabe down in Houston, Gabe, he's out on the.
Gabe.
He just hopped on. He just hopped on. Christian, hello, great, Carl Backer for sure. Appreciate you all. So we do have a couple of questions that have come in here. I want to make sure we Yeah, no worries. It's just, like you said, it's informal, but I want to make sure that we don't get cut off. I got to remember that they cut you off at an hour, evidently. So
we don't need no ghost of Teddy Riley in here, bro.
Good deal. One of the questions is, how do you know of any available online tools to help with anxiety? Yeah, and then we'll get to the second part of that here in a second.
Yeah, so to clarify, even this space that we're having, I want this to be helpful for folks, but I also recognize that this isn't therapy. So the idea of having online tools, and I can name specifically Headspace and the app Calm are two good ones that have, like I myself have taken a look at, and then I know a lot of my colleagues have recommended as well. So Headspace and Calm, they're apps, I believe. There's free options and different ways to have that be free or limited price. But again, those are tools, and that's not necessarily a replacement for therapy. That would be more of a supplement or to complement therapy. And I see the second question about why is it so difficult for our community to accept therapy, and I want to kind of bridge that those questions together. It's not just that like we have like Black people just don't like therapy. That's not what this is. This is about a historical mistrust of healthcare systems that have disproportionately hurt Black people. So it makes sense for you to look twice at a system that has previously hurt you. I would be more concerned if folks didn't have that type of hesitation or they didn't have that pause before thinking about therapy. And I know for me as a Black man in America who serves as a psychologist, I'm that much more aware about not just what I am, but who I am for my clients. So it totally makes sense for us to be kind of like cautiously optimistic about the healthcare system in general. I'm going to go ahead and just say like Tuskegee, and that should pretty much say everything there. So, it makes sense.
One of
one of several. Yeah. But again, we only got an hour, and I'm not trying to be pissed off on a Saturday morning. So, so when we think about the mistrust, that's part of where it comes from. And when people like say, well, Black people just don't like therapy, and it's like, well, let's really look at the history here, right? So for me, I know that it's a privilege as a Black man and a first-generation college student to have an advanced degree and to serve in this capacity. And one of the things that you mentioned that Yessie and I do with our podcast is to really destigmatize mental health, because there's no health without mental health. So if we're considering, you got to wash your hands for 20 seconds every time, you also have to take some deep breaths. If you need to make sure you're like disinfecting all the doorknobs and everything else, you also need to get some good sleep, because those go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, and that's very important. I know that culturally we have this hustle mentality of having to work twice as hard to get, just as far as the next man, right?
That's right.
And that mentality can be detrimental. There's also we're entitled to breaks. We're also entitled to vacations and to utilize them, and also just the mental space to know what works for you.
Yes.
Something that I was having a conversation with Warren, who's joining us here. Might have been yesterday. And I've heard this concept before, but I look at this time as really finding an opportunity to manage your energy, not necessarily your time, right? Because so much of the life that we were living before this physical distancing was, managing our time. We got to, get here by this time. Got to be at work and, check in and, there's the, get the kids to practice, and there's time limits to everything.
Right.
Right now, we have nothing but time. And so really taking this as an opportunity to explore your energy and explore where your energy is at. So, right. So, I find out that, Saturday mornings, I'm usually around this time, Saturday mornings, I'm usually pretty thoughtful. So that's the reason why we do this at 11 o'clock on Saturday.
Right. So basically, let me just reframe this for y'all that are listening. This brother said, this is all about me. This is about me. No, but for I think you said so much. You said something so beautiful there about being able to have this be such a precious time to get to know ourselves better. This isn't about having to be more productive. This isn't about having to pick up those side hustles or anything else. This is our opportunity to really grow deeper in love with ourselves and deeper in love with the people who are in our homes or in our houses, or even just in the quarantine space with us. And we don't necessarily prioritize that too much, because we're in this system that really only values production and outcome, right? Like if you think about students, the professor is not going to necessarily ask you well, did you learn? Oh, okay, cool. Then I'll give you an A. It's like, no, what are you doing on these exams and on these papers? At work, how much are you being able to produce and meet the bottom line, versus hey, do you really feel engaged with the work that we're doing? So it makes sense for people to connect and to make their self-value dependent on their productivity. But I really, really think that now more than ever is the time to break that myth, because we know that's so far from being true.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I saw Gabe chime in, and I wanted to, it's a good segue, is that talking about cultural competence in the mental health profession, right? I've gone to see therapists, but I've never seen a Black therapist, right? I've never talked to somebody who can understand my experience. And so it's partly me doing this for my therapist, right? Having this conversation and helping train them on cultural things, which is fine, but I'm not paying for that. But asking about online culturally competent mental health resources. So last week there was one of our viewers, Joey Briglio, who used to live in Ventura. He now is in Portland, Oregon. He shared a project of a friend of his named Henry Health, and it's culturally sensitive self-care support and mental health service. And he's transitioned his website to offer, things in the technological platform.
Okay.
A lot of resources and things of that nature. And maybe I'll be able to post some of these resources. I said that last week. I'll actually do it this week now that we have the topic. But post some of these resources on the webpage, folks can have access to these things at that time. But it's Henry Henry-health.com. And feel free to check that out. I also another brother who I connected with, who's in Virginia. It's men_2_heal. And he's got a book out recently, but looking at culturally competent mental health resources and or just touch points. Again, pointing to the Forbes article, I talked about like having a personal board of directors as being very key to my development, my individual
Yes.
development as a man, making sure you have sounding boards and people to bounce things off of. Well, absolutely, we should include some mental health professionals in that, because the training that you all have, the practice that you all have, and the tools that you all have access to provide us with are key things that have served me well, and I think can kind of serve others quite as well equally.
Yeah, and that's exactly the gift of therapy, is that you're able to process, you're able to explore, and at some point, the tools that you pick up in therapy are going to be those tools that you walk away with. And I think some people, to process trauma, totally makes sense that that is going to take a longer period of time, so more sessions. But at some point, you want to also be able to take those tools that you've talked about and then be able to apply those outside of therapy. And that's, again, like, we're wanting to equip you with those skills because, look, as Black people in America and people of color, marginalized folks, I can't necessarily, as a psychologist, stop that evil stuff, stop race-related stress from happening, or even work-related stress. But what I can do is validate that pain, and what I can do is to give you the tools and to equip you with the tools, so then that way you can help better manage that stuff. Because, like, yeah, there's so much out there that if we try to control all of that stuff, we will have like more anxiety and we will have depression. So what I really want folks to do is to again, I validate that concern, I slow them down a little bit, and then I ask them to think about what they do have control over. Because if not, you're gonna just run yourself into the ground that way.
Right. And I mean, I think that goes also for generational trauma. Those are things, those are very, very real things, and they can kind of hit at different times in different ways. But the fact that you brought up trauma made me also want to bring up some other aspects of this physical distancing, shelter in place type mentality, is that not everybody has safety at home, and sometimes safety is going to school. Sometimes safety is going to work. And right now, those aren't options for a lot of people, right? And so,
man.
Let's talk a little bit about that, and some folks that maybe they're tuning into this and are dealing with something, and need some inspiration, need to figure out a way out of it.
Yeah, well, first let me say the assumption that people have made by saying safe at home or safer at home, the assumption that they made is that home was safe to begin with. So if you're starting from the assumption that, hey, go home, that's where you're going to be safe, one, you got to really check yourself about the privilege that you have around saying that, and two, understand the reality that that's not always the case. So when you take a step back, it really breaks my heart to think about people only being able to get food at school, kids only being able to get fed at school, employees only being able to have health insurance from their employer. So when we say safe at home, we really have to break that down. Like, what does that mean, and what has that meant for people who have been under-resourced and marginalized? So some of what we've seen, and especially because April, I want to point this out, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and that we see globally that there has been a heartbreaking increase and a really big uptick in terms of domestic violence. And so what I want to encourage folks to make sure that you have a plan in place, that you have people out there that you're communicating with on a regular basis. If you feel like the cycle of violence is continuing and you're in the like the tension building phase, you're making sure that you're alerting people, and that you have like a bag packed ready to go, and that you like, for example, if you're not a baseball person, frozen here? Did I get
Yeah,
unfrozen?
yeah, you were frozen, but you were talking about the traumas at home.
Yes, thank you. Woo, I was like, I ain't about to be
I
out here
got
like
you.
babyface, man. So you shit. So anyway, the traumas at home, making sure that you have the safety plan, making sure that you have a bag packed ready to go, and that you have a code word. So making sure, like, when you're in communication with somebody, they know what the code word is ahead of time. So if you say that, you have that plan already in place and you're ready to go, versus trying to create that on the spot. That's going to be that much more difficult to do.
And I think the key word that you said is communication. Making
Communication,
sure that
yes.
you're isolate. A lot of folks, when they're going through these things, it's so much like shame, and so you know, particularly in our community, like I don't like that ain't nobody's business. Keep your nose out of my business, right? Like that's family business. That's grown
Mm-hmm.
folk. There's such isolation about things, about the challenges, the traumas that can be happening, that you know, it's key to remind folks that communication with somebody outside of that isolation is
Yeah,
vital.
but the thing I wanna highlight with that is going back to the generational piece. If you don't talk about it, that's how the generational trauma continues. And for some people, like, just to be clear, this isn't a technical term, but the generational curse that a lot of people talk about, that is allowed to continue if it stays in the darkness. And so what you bring to light, you bring to truth, and you also bring the healing. So you have to be able to talk about it, even if that feels uncomfortable, even if it feels like, hey, I don't really know how to describe this, but making sure that we're showing up and making sure that we're holding space for our loved ones to just talk about that. And this also is not the time for victim blaming. Like, our society is like sick in terms of how we blame the victim. So whether that's, well, she shouldn't have drank too much or she was asking for it, like, none of that mess is okay. And I think, again, as we talk about the generational trauma, those conversations are allowed to be perpetuated because they're not checked at times, if that happens to be in the family or happens to be at home.
Right, right. And I think I had communicated with you. I had hoped to get Dr. Savette Johnson. She's the behavioral health director for this county of Ventura,
Mm-hmm.
actually county between you and I.
Yeah.
And she's on point. She was unable to join us this morning, but I do want to mention that she will be a guest speaker on a teleconference town hall that I'll be organizing through my job. So through Senator Hannibal Jackson, we'll be having a teletown hall on Wednesday at 5:30. And we'll have the behavioral health directors of both Santa Barbara County and Ventura County, because I mean, we've addressed a lot of the issues, and we've talked about, you know, some of these issues of housing, food, and job insecurity. Like, these are some of the issues that are prevalent in our community, on top of the heightened stress of you know, COVID-19, and then on top of the grief of losing loved ones, and, you know, that cycle and all of that. And so looking at housing and job insecurity, those are some of the things that, you know, within the government conversations are really starting to happen. They've been happening, but it's been difficult to prioritize that when you don't have personal protection for your frontline workers. And so just the reality of kind of what this has meant for governments and systems, let alone systems of oppression, right? All of those systems are all the problems that those systems have are exacerbated in a time like this. And I think that that's something that we're seeing. 15-minute check. Wanted to just give that real quick because I'm keeping that in mind.
I appreciate that.
For sure. There were some questions that we had pop up. Oh no, we spoke to that. The generational traumas. Okay, no, that's good. And so, any other tips or thoughts on kind of like, you know, the mental health aspect of things? You know, we've talked about, you know, the different traumas and violences that people be seeing at home. Talk about the whole aspect of isolation and you know, making sure that we're communicating. You know, the aspect of the insecurities, right? The insecurities around this: food, job, and housing. any other topics or things that you think would be important to touch on, given the kind of the audience and the target of something to coffee with a black guy?
Yeah, so I see Gabe's comment. Again, what's up, Gabe? I'm not sure when this may have come up, but mental health in the Black faith community is real. So to be clear, you can have Jesus and you can have a therapist. Like, they can be in your life together at the same time. You don't have to choose one or over the other. And you speaking with a therapist doesn't mean, and I'm not saying that this is what Gabe's question was getting at, but just because I hear it a lot on my end, you can speak with a therapist and it doesn't mean that you have less faith or that you're less devout, because I think, again, they can go hand in hand. The other thing I really want to be able to address is, like, when we're in quarantine, how important it is to have structure in our day-to-day. So you don't have to be like too over the top with it, but it's really important to make sure that you're going to sleep around the same time, you're waking up around the same time, that you're structuring your day. For those of us with little ones around the house, making sure that they're getting some physical activity, going outside for a little bit. And then again, just making sure that, like, if you to a question I saw pop up and left, I really want to. Oh, there you go. I really want to make sure. Yes, thank you. Oh man, you got me all juiced up with that question. So who is this? Colo. So anyway, the question being about news consumption during this time. I want us to begin to think about our overall consumption of everything, whether that's coffee, whether that's the news, and whether that's, for me, one of my big self-care things is ice cream. So, like, I can't eat ice cream every day because, like, my fiance is probably not going to appreciate that for some reasons. And then,
right.
I can't drink coffee all the time. So just like I'm monitoring those things, we really have to create structure about how and when we're consuming news and how and when we're consuming social media. So for me, I don't like just turning on the news and seeing, the new Clorox disinfectant spokesperson talking about that in the morning. And I don't like doing that right before I go to sleep. So I make sure that I'm really intentional about, because I want to stay updated about things. I'm really intentional about consuming that during the middle of the day. So as best as I can and within reason. So, like, I'm structuring and looking at my phone on purpose at particular times to make sure that, like, I'm not feeling anxious first thing, to start my day and right before I go to sleep. So we need to ask ourselves, and I'll close with this piece here. We need to ask ourselves on a daily basis how we're going to nourish ourselves, whether that's with food, whether that's from a spiritual perspective. And when you're not looking at the memes and when you're not looking at the social media and the news and all that.
Yeah, and I think that just plugs back to what you started with, the mind, body, and soul / spirit, right?
Yes,
It's that, making sure that you have that balance. For me, if anybody who's watched my live feed in the past week, like, it's bike rides. And there's nothing I live in Santa Barbara and I pay extra for rent because of that. So I'm going to utilize what I pay for. And that's the beauty of it. Right? So, I'm out riding my bike, and that's always been a release for me. That goes back to something as a kid. Like, that was my only mode of transportation, riding bike around town, like, with the fellas and going, leaving. We had a bike that looked like a motorcycle that would, like, the community bike that would, like, you'd see it in somebody's front yard and pick it up and ride it to the other side of town, leaving in somebody else's front yard. And we used to just do that for about a year and a half. And so, like, that's what is helpful for me. Like, when I'm here, and it's just to being able to get back and connect to those memories and some of the things that, it's just fun to be able to do that. But, finding whatever that is, like, that for me is mind and body.
Yes.
All three. Some folks want to work out, do push-ups, whatever. I should probably do some more of that. But, it's all about finding what works for you.
Yeah, and that kind of, I want to do more push-ups, but I can't. Or I want to do some sit-ups, or I can't. And I want to do more bike riding, but I can't. when we recognize that we haven't done something that we maybe ideally would like to do, the most important, the biggest takeaway that I want to say from everything today is how important it is to not judge ourselves during this time and to be kind to ourselves. Like, if you ain't hear me and my beard say nothing else today, don't judge yourself and be kind. Because when you start to engage in some of those more self-defeating thoughts and that negative self-talk that we started with today, that's when you start to have more mental health concerns, and that's when you also start to have more health concerns in general. So it's so important that we out right now are our biggest fans, and that we're supporting ourselves with that same compassion and that kindness that we so freely give to others. Like, if you don't, if you eat like, too many bites of ice cream, like, all right, but still be kind to yourself. If you don't do those push-ups, all right, but be kind to yourself,
Yeah. 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 I mean, and I think that, like, that's a general take, like you said, a real good takeaway from this is just be kind to yourself during this time, because, I mean, during this time and always, right? I look at, I dedicated this to my cousin. Like, no one knew he was dealing with these issues or what have you that caused him that ultimate demise. But, that if he just had that message of be kind to yourself, like, okay, maybe everything that you're going through isn't, life or death. Maybe it seemed like it at the time, but when you when you pull back, in perspective is a beautiful teacher, right? When you pull back and kind of look at your situation of how it falls into the context of the grand scheme of things, it's like, okay, not to invalidate what I'm dealing with or going through, but it's much larger than just me, So it's good to be able to do that. Have a question here as we're coming downhill in the conversation is that I've seen and heard some folks criticize Black people who are not social distancing. Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Oh, Lord Jesus. Yeah, that's a question. So let me answer it like this. I think people who are being more criticized for that are, just like we talked about, you had mental health before the pandemic and after. Black people are being more scrutinized and criticized for same behaviors that others, non-Black people, are doing. So I see that being kind of a continuation of the same structural and institutional racism, not necessarily, like, it just happens to have that flavor of the month right now of not social distancing. But people have loved to scrutinize and to demonize and to criminalize Black people before our country was even a country. So I don't see that as being anything different. I think it's, again, like the flavor of the month of how it's being done. But that's the same racism that we've seen. I think
And not to cut you off, but I think there absolutely is some reality in it, and we talked about it a little bit last week, is that we're a communal people, right?
Yes.
We're close in our families, and and what I've seen from a lot of the Hispanic and Latino culture as well is that there's this whole familial thing, and so you're telling me that I can't go see my cousins. It's their birthday. We get together for this big party every year, and I can't go over. I mean, there's that reality, that connection is there, and something that is a part of our culture. And when we're talking about cultural competence and cultural sensitivity, I think that a lot of these messages are relayed from our officials. There's not that they don't necessarily have that cultural sensitivity, because when you're talking about physical distancing, you wouldn't have came out and started calling it social distancing from the beginning, because that's not a term that people can connect with. And knowing that if you're talking to our communities, you're going to have to be a trusted messenger, and you're going to have to, be able to go in 5-minute warning. Appreciate that. And so you trusted messenger, and then also have to, move that issue forward. Or move that message forward in that community through those messengers. And so I just wanted to bring that into the conversation here a little bit as well.
Yeah, that's great, man. I really like that. We are a communal people, and we find not only do we find love and connection with our people, but we also find a sense of safety, right? Like, so
Right.
the reason why we're connecting and wanting to remain together is because a lot of us feel unsafe at times. Like, nobody wants to get sick. And so when we're able to still connect, that gives us a sense of normalcy, which feeds into and helps bolster our sense of safety. So like, I get that. Yeah.
In no way am I saying, that that's an excuse for not social distancing, but I mean, just putting some context on the conversation. I still think that it's smart to, despite what the Governor Kemp in Georgia is doing, I think it's smart to continue to physical distance. And I appreciate brothers like Killer Mike, who's like, despite he's a business owner, despite the governor opening the state back up, is, deciding to stay closed. But,
Right.
I just want to say, we're wrapping up here, and I want to say thank you so much for joining today. Glad we finally got a chance to put something together, man.
Yeah, brother. It's just good to, I think for me, the act of service right now, I mean, this is why I went to school for like 50 million years, all the exams and all the papers and everything else. But one, being of service feels really good. And two, just to be honest, it's helpful to connect with you as another Black man in America. So I think the service and the connection is really giving me life this morning. So I'm going to drink the rest of this coffee. A lot of love in my heart, man. So I appreciate that.
Likewise, brother. Look. This is how we do it in the digital age. Grip.
Grip, grip.
Indeed, man. Indeed.
I love that.
Thank you for those who joined online. I just want to give a quick plug to make sure that you go to our website, or my website, as well as Dr. Dodson's website, which is www.phdodson.com. And make sure that you go there, check this brother out, follow him on the gram and all that kind of stuff. He's into some good stuff. Go check out CWABG.com. We should have the supply chain backing up again. So order your mug if you haven't already. Get that in there, help support the thing, and also go onto the website. We've got a place where you can go if you're, at home and you're making money, or you have some money and you feel like donating to something like this. That this is something that you enjoy. Please feel free to donate. And so the CWABG.com. You can go there, and all the details on how you can do that are available. But thank you again, Brother Dodson, Brother Dr. Milo Dodson.
It's all love, man. Thank you. I'll be looking for my mug in the mail.
Indeed. Absolutely. I got you. Send love to your queen and the family.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you all. And we'll be back here next week at same time, same place. Maybe be on LinkedIn Live. Still looking to get my approval on that and have some folks working with that. And been in contact with the company about that. And so next week at 11 a.m., it'll be the FSIM edition, first Saturday in May, which I normally go to the Kentucky Derby. They have postponed until September. And so I'll be doing a special show to have conversations about, we'll probably start off conversations on something about, who knows, maybe early jockeys of the Kentucky Derby. Most of them are Black.
And May is Mental Health Awareness Month, just so you know.
Good things. Well, I appreciate you, brother. Godspeed.
Yep. Cool. Peace.